Yep. Yep. All right. I call the 2,408th meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or joining the Zoom webinar. This meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and Comcast Cable Channel 30 within city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall or participate via Zoom. If you are interested in speaking, please let staff know by filling out a yellow comment card for those at City Hall or by emailing ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov for those on Zoom. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and Zoom participant list and chat. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. We ask that all Zoom participants who intend to speak label their Zoom username to show their first and last names for the record. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. For more information, contact the city recorder at 503-786-7502. Servicios de traducción en español está disponible cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Para obtener más información, llama al secretario de la ciudad a 503-786-7502. Translation services are also available in other languages. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The City of Milwaukee respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. And then I usually launch into announcements, and Nicole will have a slide for those in a minute. But I guess our big announcement is our new city manager, the selection of Emma to continue and to take the acting out from in front of her name. So I know we're all very excited to have Emma staying with us as the city manager, and I just want to offer her a chance to say a few words if she wanted to do that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm so overjoyed. It's one of those funny things. This weekend, everyone said, "So when do you start?" in my family, and I said, 4 months ago. But the fact that it's a continuing on of what I've been doing in the interim chair doesn't make it any less exciting. You guys have heard me say this a lot, but for those who may be tuning in and don't know the story, I did a lot of consulting work in Milwaukee back in 2017 and 2018, and I remember driving home from many a town hall in the Waldorf school and calling my husband and just saying, I really want to work here one day. Like I would leave those events buzzing because this place is so special and this community is so special. It felt like winning the lottery when I got the assistant city manager job, and I have just adored my time in that role, and fell even deeper in love with Milwaukee, getting the chance to work with the 150 amazing people who make Team Milwaukee what it is. And I just so appreciate the vote of confidence you've all shown in me. I'm going to give it my all every single day, and I really hope to make you proud and the community proud. I am very proud to be the city manager. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, Emma. And now we'll go on to our more routine announcements. The Llewellyn NDA will hold its final 2 concerts on August 21st and 28th at 6:30 p.m. at Ball Michelle Park. Bring a blanket or lawn chair to enjoy the festivities. Hearth and Soul Pizza with Bella the Pizza Bus will be serving up some delicious food for purchase. The Ardenwald Johnson Creek NDA will hold its final concert this Thursday, August 22nd at 6:30 p.m. at Ardenwald Park. Vendors include Milwaukie Cafe and Bottle Shop, Luna's Ice Cream, and Made in Milwaukie. Join the North Clackamas Watersheds Council for a walk through the Three Creeks Natural Area on Sunday, August 25th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. The tour will include the exploration of the different habitats this unique natural area supports. Registration is required and participants will meet in the parking lot of the North Clackamas Aquatics Park. Join the downtown community for a celebration of art, music, and food at the next First Friday event on September 6th from 5 to 8 p.m. The Milwaukie Environmental Stewards Group brings their 3rd annual sustainability fair to downtown on Saturday, September 7th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The annual event includes vendors, kids' activities, a repair fair, book exchange, live music, and so much more. There's also a lot of recycling opportunities and donation opportunities to Community Warehouse and Habitat for Humanity of good household stuff that you may be ready to get rid of. The event takes place in the parking lot across from Historic City Hall building at Harrison and Main Street. This year's Sustainability Fair also includes a trash and fashion show sponsored by the Milwaukie Arts Committee. Community members are invited to unleash their creativity by creating wearable art using all recycled, upcycled, or reused materials. Prizes will be awarded in youth and adult categories. And I believe Councilor Stavengeward has some activity planned for the...
I sure do. Well, actually, this is a big, huge thank you to all the Milwaukie residents who have contributed their broken and worn down crayons over the last couple of weeks. My house overfloweth. And if anybody is watching and has a miracle way to take the paper wrapping off of broken and worn down crayons without screaming, please contact me. Because I have to do that. What I'm planning to do is have an interactive space for youth and other coloring fans to come up and put the crayons into little molds, and then we will melt them down and create more coloring blocks. And those are really handy for littler kids who are using their big motor skills to make art. So it's not limited to children. If you like, coloring blocks, you're welcome to do that. And maybe we could take some coloring pages that the city has too. I can have those there. You're all welcome. It's going to be, 5.5 hours or something?
5 hours, yeah.
I'll bring a chair. You can come and visit.
Stop by Wichita Park anytime between 5 and 7 p.m. on Thursday, September 12th to get an update on the Monroe Street Greenway project. An important east-west route across the city, Monroe Street connects several neighborhoods and downtown and has been identified as a neighborhood greenway for, about 15 years. Greenways are low-volume, low-speed routes that provide safe, quiet roads for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukieoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. And after the announcements, I usually have a haiku. I had no submissions for, look at that. Nicole is fast. That is awesome. I did not get any submissions from the public for the haiku this month. I do want to encourage people to submit haiku for reading at the city council meeting. There's really no rules other than they have to be G-rated. They can be about Milwaukie, but they do not have to be. And I really appreciate Councilor Stavengeward stepping up in our short break between our work session and our regular session to compose this haiku for for tonight's meeting in recognition of one of the first things on our agenda. And would you like to read it, Councilor Savage-Ord?
Sure. Is there any interpretive dance? Would any?
You are allowed to do that if you so decide.
Milwaukie blooms bright. Bee City hums sweet delight. Pollinators smile.
Thank you for doing that. So with that, that's an actually great segue and introduction to our first agenda item, which is Public Works Director Peter Passarelli and our new Climate and Natural Resources Manager, Katie Guevara, to talk about Bee City USA designation.
Thank you, Mayor Beatty and council members. I am Peter Passarelli, the Public Works Director. I did want to introduce Katie before we get started. Katie Guevara is our newest member in our department. Katie comes from the city of Portland, working in the city of Portland, where they worked in the city administrator's transition office. And prior to that, Katie worked as a co-director for Intertwine. So lots of good public sector experience and experience with climate, natural climate solutions. Really excited to have Katie on board. I've had a big gap there, and I'm really happy Katie's here.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Katie. And we know we have you on the agenda, I think, for October 1 for climate discussion. So we'll really look forward to that. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Good. So Nicole's got him set up.
All right. Well, good. So I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk about, I think what's a really important initiative that sort of aligns with, the work that the city's been doing related to climate and natural resources. It goes sort of hand in hand with the Tree City USA and, it's Bee City USA. And I think this initiative has come to fruition based on a lot of interest from our community. In particular, Virginia Pye is here tonight from our PARB board. Virginia's been really instrumental, but I would also mention, Colleen Rockwell, Laura Ross, and Joel Bergman, Lisa Lashbrook, Lisa Gunyon-Rinker, just great community members that have really been interested in this initiative. And I think their interest and interest from council members have really made this come to light and allowed us to bring it to council to talk about it, and then at a future meeting, adopt a resolution and move on to become Bee City USA. A little bit of information about Bee City USA. So it's an initiative from the Xerxes Society, and Xerxes has really sort of worked to protect wildlife and through the conservation of invertebrates and making sure their habitats are protected. Back in 2012, they developed this Bee City USA initiative and began working with communities to protect pollinators and sustain pollinators by making sure that communities were providing habitats and protections for those places. And their focus is really, when we talk about Bee City, it's focused more on the native bees that we have. And there's over 3,600 species in North America. I've got another slide coming up that sort of breaks it down a little bit more. But, the idea is that these native species of bees provide so many benefits to the habitat and our ecosystems. Bee City works to provide those protections by making sure there's native plants available, there's nesting sites, and there's a reduction in the use of pesticides. I know there's been a lot of, information over the last, 10, 15 years about loss of insects and bees in particular based off of, systemic insecticide use throughout the country. So in terms of diversity, I mentioned 3,600 bees in North America. In Oregon, there's somewhere between 600 to 800 bees. In the Portland region, 80 to 100. And you can generally find in a single garden around here 20 to 30 different types of native bees. I've got a nice garden in my backyard, and I can see, it's amazing how many different types of bees you see with the plants that we have, the flowers, and just fantastic. So it's a huge diversity, but it certainly requires that protection. And this Bee City USA will help us provide that protection for those native bees in our community. What do native bees do? Well, I mean, they are an extremely important pollinator. They pollinate up to 75% of the plant species in North America. They also do help with crop production. In addition to those agricultural bees, honeybees, but native bees also help with crop production. They're really important for biodiversity and our habitat health. They also work to help us sequester carbon, to help us meet our climate goals, climate resiliency, and then they also provide a wealth of food and other products that are for use in the country. I don't know if, Katie, you had anything you wanted to add on anything there, or?
The sequestering carbon and the sequestering carbon and the climate resilience really comes from the habitat health that they bring and the biodiversity that they help foster within gardens and the environment. And so the small insects, what they do on an ecosystem scale is really important and can be quantified in some of our climate goals here too.
Thanks. So what are the requirements of Bee City USA? So first and foremost, there has to be a committee that's formed. And we've worked with the Rotary Club and our staff and PARB to develop a joint committee of Rotary members and PARB members that will be that committee to represent Bee City USA. And we're looking at having quarterly meetings. That group would meet quarterly to meet that committee requirement. Bee City USA would be sponsored by our Public Works Department. Riley Gill, our Environmental Services Coordinator, is here tonight from our department. He's been very interested in this initiative as well and is going to participate on that committee and help us facilitate the protection of native bees in the community. It also requires approval of our local government. So there's a resolution. I've provided a draft resolution. That draft resolution has gone to the Xerxes Committee for approval. And I think just in the last day or so, we heard word back that resolution was approved. So we'll be bringing that resolution back to council probably in the next couple of meetings to get that approved. And then there's an application that needs to be submitted through their online portal. And Rotary is going to submit that application for us and pay the fee. There's a nominal fee based on the size of the community. So those are the requirements to be a Bee City USA. And then there are some commitments. So that joint committee that we talked about will be a standing committee that will work, will meet quarterly in perpetuity as long as we remain a Bee City USA. And then there's some work that we need to do in terms of improving and setting up pollinator habitats within the community. There is a requirement for the city to adopt an integrated pest management plan. What we have in place right now is we use Portland's integrated pest management plan. We've identified that plan in our stormwater management plan. That's the tool that we use for our local government operations to reduce the use of pesticides and herbicides and fungicides in the community. We might have to tweak that a little bit and maybe make a formal adoption at some point in time. And then there's also these pollinator conscious policies. Our comprehensive plan has some language in the natural resources section of that comp plan that addresses pollinators. There may be the need to further adopt another policy in the future as we look at that. And then there's also the need to have pollinator awareness events throughout the year. I did want to point out, and the mayor had sent this to me earlier this week. There is an event September 14th, the pollinator awareness event at Mill Park, which is just on the northeast side of Milwaukie off of, I think,
Linwood.
yeah. And then there's also the requirement to post signage as a BCD USA. So those are the commitments that we need to meet to be BCD USA. Are there any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Seems pretty clear. Yeah, sure.
I was just wondering, within the pollinator conscious policies, if any of the cities have considered banning is it neonics?
Neonicotinoids.
Yeah. Oh, $10 word, Mayor. So I was just wondering if that's something that other cities, that are B cities have considered, because that when it's sprayed on to plants, even if you're buying them in a nursery, it's really damaging to bees that might be coming to your garden for nutrients.
I can't speak to other cities. I know that we're pretty conscious of the use of neonicotinoids with any, pesticides that we might use in those limited applications. And I think that's an important part of how we've practically applied that integrated pest management plan that we work with Portland. I can't speak to the other communities, but I can certainly find out.
It'd be interesting to know if there are policies or actions that other cities have taken that would influence the sale of products that are sprayed with those, because there are a lot of options that are a lot more healthy for the insects and for us.
When I was the council rep to the North Clackamas Watersheds Council, I raised some of those issues, and just the issue that, Fred Meyer sells all this stuff. And when I first came here, I thought, oh, if Fred Meyer sells it, it must be safe. And there's all kinds of things that you should not be using that they sell in commercial gardens that are bad for the fish, bad for the pollinators. I learned that there is supposedly some regional sort of public outreach campaign about those things, but I've really not seen a lot from that. And it is, I do find it frustrating. And could there be, I do think the watershed councils may be a good platform for kind of trying to have that discussion across jurisdictions. But anyway, I think it's very frustrating because we know that a lot of the big box stores, their plants have been treated with neonicotinoids, and people don't know it, don't realize it, and it is damaging to when they bring it home and put it in the ground. Yeah.
Sorry to interject. We have Laura Rost with B City USA online, and she's wanting to speak. Is that okay if we promote her to speak?
I'm fine with that. Please. Welcome, Laura.
Laura, you should be able to go ahead and speak now.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I am the National Coordinator of B City USA for the Xerces Society. I just wanted to chime in that, yes, some of our affiliates have worked to disallow the use of neonicotinoids in their city. Basically, there's two routes that we regulate pesticide use within a municipality. There's like the city lands, but then there's the private lands as well. So those are regulated differently. So depending on the area of the country, sometimes the ban cannot come at the city level. It needs to be the county or state level. So I would need to check with my coworkers to find out what the case would be in Oregon. But certainly, yes, there are opportunities to disallow pesticides like neonics, but that's not the only bad pesticide out there. So that's one of the reasons we emphasize using an integrated pest management plan, is because there are a number of pesticides that people may turn to if we just forbid the use of neonics. They might substitute something that could even be potentially more harmful. So it's really good to look at all the pesticides we're using in our communities and reduce them no matter what they are.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would just note, since Laura spoke up, that Laura Rost is the coordinator, and she's a Milwaukie resident. So it's exciting to have her helping us with this.
She's also on the Water Council.
Yeah, she's on the Watershed Council. Yeah, board. Other questions? Well, I would just have a comment, which is, it's so exciting to see this come forward. I talked with Colleen Rockwell from the Rotary, I don't know, probably a year ago. And the Rotary's been really proactive with working with the historic Milwaukie neighborhood as well to do pollinator plantings in downtown. They call it a pollinator pathway. I have noticed also West did some pollinator plantings around the sewage treatment plant. So maybe as we get this approved and get our signs up, we can help get more of that kind of planting going on around town.
We actually have a small pollinator habitat actually at our Public Works facility in the parking lot back by our ops building.
Yeah, cool.
I just wanted to quickly jump in and echo everything Peter said about the appreciation for the community passion for this project. I kind of early on in my interim stint got invited to a meeting, and it's not often when you're kind of proposed with something that people are fighting over who gets to really host the main committee. And it was funny, I came in, we're like, well, Parb is excited to be the Bee City Committee, and Rotary said, no, we want to be the Bee City Committee. And I'm so grateful for just the shared enthusiasm, the willingness to collaborate. This is really exciting. And I just share a funny story. My mom was driving in to Milwaukie today on 224 and gave me a call and said, I'm confused. Are you the Goose City? Are you the Tree City? You know, all the time. Welcome to, are you the Dogwood City? And I said, and tonight or soon we will be a Bee City. You can never have too many mascots. So I love it.
Well, somebody noted before the meeting began that both Councilor Stavanger and I have the pollinator license plates. So you can get pollinator license plates now from the state, and they're beautiful, actually. They're one of the nicer looking state license plates, I have to say. But anyway, I digress. If nothing else, we will thank Peter and Katie and Virginia and Riley and Laura, and I bet Colleen is online too. We'll thank them all for their work, and we'll look forward to getting the final resolution on probably a consent agenda. And yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay, so that brings us to the public comment, community comment part of the agenda. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community member comments regarding city business that is not already on the agenda. Before we begin, is there follow-up from the August 6th comments, City Manager Zagor? Okay. So I don't think I have anybody in the room who is looking to comment. Do we have, sorry, I'm making Nicole run. Do we have anyone on Zoom who indicates they want to comment during community comments?
No, nobody on Zoom has indicated that they would like to speak.
Okay, then I will forego reading the script, and we will go on to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council July 16th, 2024 work session and July 16th, 2024 regular session, a resolution appointing Jessica Peterson to the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and a resolution approving the contract for a new city manager. Does any member of council wish to remove a consent agenda item? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Oh, which side are we on? It's this side this time.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. None heard. The consent agenda is adopted. And Emma formally gets the assistant removed from.
Smooth move, Nicole. Scott better watch out. Scott better watch out. Right.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there she is. I was like, wait, where's our, okay, just in time. Council goal, equity update report from our equity inclusion coordinator, Gabriela Santoyo Gutierrez.
Feeling different, Emma?
Like you wake up on your birthday, you're like, I'm older.
Oh, there's a time, yeah.
City manager years are like dog years.
Hello, I'm gonna stop this.
Microphone.
There we go. I was gonna say, I'll repeat it again. Buenas tardes, Mayor, Council President, Council, and soon-to-be City Manager, right?
It's official now.
Again, as Mayor said, my name is Gabriela Santoyo Gutierrez. I'm the city's Equity and Inclusion Coordinator. And excited to be here tonight to be presenting an equity goal update for equity metrics. But to start us off, kind of backtrack a little bit with some background and context. Council first adopted equity and inclusion and justice as a goal in August 2020 and reaffirmed their commitment to this goal in April 2023. The Equity Steering Committee was then created August in 2021 to assist the city in advancing equity initiatives. Then in fall 2022, the city contracted with King Independent Research to conduct a comprehensive DEI assessment of how the city serves the public and how the city operates as an employer. Key findings for the assessment were presented to council last fall in 2023. The study helped inform the development of a multi-year DEI work plan for the city, adopted by council on December 12, 2023. Oof. This brings us to today's update, where we'll primarily focus on progress made within Track 2 related to ESC and council's interest in producing a suite of performance measures to evaluate the city's equity work. And to assist us on this journey, in May this year, we hired an amazing equity consultant, Lily Copenhagen, from Equity Analytics Groups to help us develop effective and meaningful equity metrics for the city of Milwaukie. Now, this includes performance indicators for community-wide outcomes, strategic plan outcomes, and other internal departmental outcomes. All right.
Oh, you're fine. It's okay. Want it bigger. There we go.
Perfect. So to kind of give us an overview for tonight, we'll take about 20 minutes for me to present some material and 25 minutes of discussion. I'll start with a refresher, a little bit of the equities plan's 3 tracks. I'll provide an update on track 2, focusing on the equity metrics piece of this. And this includes a short recap, I'm sure it feels so long ago, of the joint meeting with ESC and City Council last month.
And then we'll spend most of our time reviewing the first draft of the equity metrics based on the community-wide outcomes. After all this, discussion time. And then in case I forget to mention or anything we forget to cover, I'll return back in November to update us on track 1 and 3, a part of the equity plan. So this won't be the last of me. Okay. How's it, Nicole? Can you do it? Okay. All right. So what are these tracks I'm talking about again? So as we may recall, in March, the core structure of the equity plan we shared is organized into these 3 track areas before you. Track 1 are actions led by the Equity Inclusion Coordinator as core functions of the city's equity programming. This includes training, material and resource development, planning, policy updates, and relationship building. Track 2, focus areas to be explored by the ESC, with support as me as their staff liaison. Track 3 in this case is major city initiatives within equity and nexus that the city's coordinator, myself, will advise on, and this includes hubs, TSV, and so on. Now, as I mentioned above, we'll be focusing on track 2 on the next couple of slides. So I'm going to transition this over. So check out this fun list. On the screen, we have a drafted list of 23 community-wide outcomes that Lily helped us put together, pulled from our 2017 Milwaukie Community Visions document. I won't read the full list, but some of these examples on here include potential priority outcomes was Milwaukie promotes sustainable development. Milwaukie has well-maintained streets. Milwaukie has a robust transit system. And in Milwaukie, art and creativity are woven into the fabric of the city. Now, I'd say for that one, at least we could get close to checking that one off as we continue in this, but the city has so much amazing artwork. Now, I'm gonna keep us moving forward to the next slide for us. As going back to the joint council that I had mentioned, on July 25th, we had a kickoff work meeting with the City Council and ESC to develop equity indicators. Now, the group voted for the 5 outcomes for which they wanted to start developing some metrics for. And further outcomes will be worked on in later cycles of measure development, but these are some of the top 5 outcomes. And I know the chart is a little bit hard to see, so I also had them listed on the left, but I'll go ahead and read those for us. Milwaukie residents enjoy affordable housing. Milwaukie is a safe and welcoming community. Milwaukee's neighborhoods are the centers of daily life, with each containing amenities and community-minded local businesses that meet residents' needs. Milwaukie is adaptive to the realities of changing climate, and Milwaukee's government is transparent and accessible. Now, this may also feel long ago, but this reminds me back to a question that Council President Massey had posed in our March check-in for our last equity goal update. And the question was along the lines of, I see you scowling, you're like, okay, what was this? It was, how do we know we've been successful in measuring equity? Where do we start? And this is that initial process and continuing. It's narrowing down what community outcomes and change we want to see in Milwaukie. What do we want to measure? Now, some of these metrics in process we're already tracking data for, and others will have to get a little more creative of how we collect that data. But as we continue working on these outcomes, with the 5 that I just shared in front of us, we'll have a starting list of potential metrics within each of those outcomes. And I'll summarize those on the next slides for us. All right. As you see kind of presenting in front of you, 3 different kind of categories under Milwaukie residents enjoy affordable housing. This is starting kind of with conversation about this customer community member experience that's going to lead to present city and future generational impacts. So here, process is seen, the process category is seen more as efforts and resources. And this means, what does the city offer? What does the city do? What resources were expended? This is staff time, this is funding. And what were the things that happened as a result of those efforts, such as number of applications received, number of attendees at an event, or number of hours of training conducted. This in contrast to impact, which is more directly to the change we want to see for each of those outcomes. And both of these are different than lived experience, which is how people experience or think about the city and the world around them. And since we care about process, impact, and lived experience of all Milwaukeeans, we want to evaluate the equity piece of all of them. And so as we continue, I want to note also that all the measurements here that we're going to see in the next couple 5 outcomes should be reported by also demographic categories such as race, gender, age, socioeconomic status, demographic information, and neighborhoods, or the popular, the more sophisticated term, spatile distribution of neighborhoods.
What was the term?
Spatile, I think, is it spatile or?
Spatial.
Oh, thank you,
spatial.
It totally
spatial.
looks like spatile. It totally.
Distribution.
I use that from now on.
Thank you. I was like, I feel like that's another
Yeah.
related term.
Way to start a trend.
Thank you. So connecting back, in the example that we see above here, it's again, Milwaukie residents enjoy affordable housing. Process here is home ownership grant programs. It's, in that case, it's participants and funds awarded. It's land trust housing programs funded and home repair assistant programs. Then in the impact status category, we see housing cost burden is equitably experienced by all Milwaukeeans. The portion of Milwaukeeans who are unhoused, insecurely unhoused, or in unsafe housing, and the length of time Milwaukeeans report that they can afford to feel safe and secure housing in Milwaukee. Then in that third category of lived experience, it's Milwaukeeans report that they can afford safe and secure housing in Milwaukee, and Milwaukeeans who report that there is a path to home ownership that is financially viable. And so all of these kind of connect to kind of some cross collaboration, already ongoing work of community development for affordable housing and our nonprofit programs that's ongoing. Okay, I'm going to move us to the next outcome priority. Milwaukie is a safe and welcoming community. For process, safety-related community events and programming, public social services programs, and other community-based social service support programs are part of those process. And what does Milwaukie offer here in this case? The impact piece are crimes, potential examples are crimes by rate type, resident retention, portions of residents who qualify for those social services. And that lived experience piece, Milwaukeeans report that they feel safe. Milwaukee youth who report that they feel welcomed in school. And there's also overlap here already. Also, I mentioned community development, but also our Milwaukee Police Department data information. Okay, I'm going to transition us to our third outcome. I can slow down if that's going too quick.
I think during discussion, we can totally come back and pull these up as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to take a quick water break if that's okay. Me too.
While you do that, Gabriella, I might just add, because I believe, Council President, you weren't at the ESC meeting. So while the group kind of prioritized these 5 outcomes to start with, the vision is that we kind of keep building out an arsenal of metrics over time. So kind of start here. These were prioritized as ones that were most timely or most at the forefront of our minds because of potential disparities in the community. But the vision is, once you run through this process and you develop metrics and you start that kind of dashboarding and reporting process, you then do it again with 5 more. And so we're continuing to build out that suite. I just wanted to make sure you didn't think we were leaving all those other outcomes behind forever.
And did we get to all of these in our effort with Lily, or some of this was done after?
You selected the 5.
Yeah.
All of the things you see in purple are Lily's brilliance. They are Lily's
okay.
starting list of a proposed metrics list. And so we're bringing this back to you and to the ESC to continue the conversation.
Great. And that's a drafted list, definitely not final, so. Okay, I'm going to transition us over to our third outcome priority. And that's that Milwaukee's neighborhoods are the centers of daily life, with each containing amenities and community-minded local businesses that meet residents' needs. And some of those examples in those categories for process is small business and grant programs, public amenities, right, our parks, pools, playgrounds, and other maintenance efforts of staff and funds invested and staff engaged in those projects. And for the impact status category under this priority, it is type of businesses that are in those different neighborhoods. Is it groceries, restaurants, social service programs? And what type of public amenities are available? Parks, playgrounds, right? By neighborhood, and other public transportation coverage and accessibility index by neighborhood. Now, a piece of that category for lived experience is Milwaukeeans report that their neighborhoods have community-centered local businesses, resources. Another is Milwaukeeans report that the service businesses' public amenities and transportation options meet their needs. And this is also ongoing efforts with hubs, with TSP, and our neighborhood district associations, and parks as well. Okay, I'm going to transition us to our fourth. And this one is, Milwaukee is adaptive to the realities of changing climate. And here there are examples for processes: emergency preparedness trainings and informational events and resources, sustainable energy production programs, climate change informed building code modifications. And that impact status piece is portions of Milwaukeeans who have an emergency prepared kit that provide food, water, and shelter, or basic health needs for at least 14 days for all household members. And I love that Lily included this, is including pets, y'all, including pets. But for that lived experience piece, it's Milwaukeeans report that they feel prepared for emergencies. Milwaukeeans report that they feel Milwaukee is responding appropriately to climate change and planning for the future. Okay. Our last priority. Milwaukee's government is transparent and accessible. Process. Development of interactive and meaningful dashboards, youth civic engagement programs, community engagement strategies to increase participation and remove barriers. Impact status, public participation on committees, public comment and hearing engagement, and public engagement with websites and other social media channels. Now, that lived experience piece, Milwaukeeans report that they have a good understanding of Milwaukee government functions, priorities, and programs, as well as Milwaukeeans report that there are ways for them to engage in governmental process that are meaningful and accessible. Okay, then with that, I'm going to transition us over to the discussion piece of this. So some questions I have for us, kind of maybe starting with the first one. Which metrics, actually I'm going to go ahead and read all of them. Which metrics resonate the most with you and why? Are there metrics missing that you expected to see under these outcomes? How would council like to see the community engaged in the metric development process? And how does council want to continue to be involved in metric development and reporting? Okay. I'm going to transition it over to you all.
How do people want to, oh yeah, we are going to start on this side. But if, I don't know if we want to go question by question,
Can go category back.
category.
Maybe we could go slide like outcome by outcome and do the first two questions. So for each one, what's resonating most with you and
And
is
what
there
do you-
anything missing?
Okay.
Once we kind of have gone through those outcomes, we can come back to these sort of process questions of where do you want us to go next with this? Would you like to see any community, public participation in this process, and how would you like to be kept apprised? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks,
Let's
Emma.
go back to that first outcome then. I think it was affordable housing.
That was it.
Okay, Milwaukee residents enjoy affordable housing.
Did you want us to start with
Yeah,
questions?
so if you see something that really resonates, or you have questions,
Okay.
you see something that resonates, you feel like something's missing,
Great.
any or all of those?
Well, I'm really excited to see this one as the first outcome. I was also, it felt really wonderful to see that council and the equity steering committee were aligned as this just kind of shot to the top of the list when we did the ranking process. So it made me feel like reassured that it's a goal, that the equity steering committee wants us to keep in our minds. Joseph left, but if you can hear me out there, Joseph. We had a really exciting meeting last week with the Housing Advisory Board that we serve on. And that's the board that advises the Clackamas County Housing Authority. And we were talking about the scattered sites. So council's familiar with the 18 scattered sites that are here in Milwaukee city limits. There are more that are outside in adjacent areas. But one of the things that came out of that meeting was discussion about potential with land trust models. So I'm really excited to see this as the second process metric. Because what the housing authority is really seems leaning into is a discussion about what it would look like in our city to have those 18, hopefully all of them, 18 homes, and they're good size, like 2 and 3 bedroom family size homes as part of a land trust model. So that really jumped out at me. That, we were thinking kind of on the same wavelength. And then I guess, I just, in lived experience metrics, the third one, it wears at me, when I think about all of the different things that are changing in our city and how quickly they're changing, and that there's excitement, and there's also this kind of like daunting air to it, because we know that the cost of living is going up, and that not just to make sure that you have a home, but everything else that goes with it. So I'm really excited that we'll be able to hopefully work with the equity steering committee on some of these things and see some hopefully really good stuff come to fruition. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for in comments, but I'm really excited about this one, obviously.
Yes, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I obviously I'm all for this. Actually, when the survey went up, when we did our thing, I actually kind of felt vindicated in a way, because I've been clamoring so much for affordability in general. I like each one of them. I don't think there's any that I would take out, because I think these are all measurable. These are all things that we can do. Why minimize it? Because if we take anything out, then I feel like we're going to lose that metric, right? Unless we have a better idea to measure it. But I'm for each one of these, because the lived experience part, the impact, the status, the process, I think it hits it right on the head to what not only things that we think about on the dais, but things that the public has been thinking about and clamoring for so long through multiple surveys that we've seen. So yeah, I'm all for that. And I'm glad that this is the top of the billet here as well. And yeah, because that, just to mention what the 18 scattered sites, that's a big deal, because I remember we've talked about it together as well, and I talked to the county about that same thing, about turning into land trust. Habitat for Humanity met with them about 3 weeks ago about that model and those things and the opportunities. I've met with Movement Mortgage, which is a local lender, about potential first-time homebuyer grants for some of those people that are just right on the cusp. So a lot of this stuff that's going on now is stuff that I've been working on for the last couple months on some of them, probably longer from before. So to see this stuff start coming into where we can actually have measurables,
Right.
it's great. I don't think there's any on here that I would remove. Adding on to it potentially, but I think this is a good starting piece for affordable housing, for sure.
Great. Thank you.
And Councilor Stavengers, if you'd like to continue those conversations on the scattered sites, I'd love to get with you on those.
That sounds exciting.
Okay. Council President or?
Sure.
Council, okay.
First of all, I like all of the 5 categories. I tell you, when I was reading this over the weekend, I was like kind of overwhelmed with the amount of work this seems to be. And so I'm cautious about it, because I'm a big believer in metrics. And, I don't want to get too far in the details, but when I read any of these metrics, I go, like, let me pick one. Milwaukee's report that they can afford safe and secure housing in Milwaukee. Once you get into the devil of that detail, how you actually measure that, how you collect the data. I mean, this is not Precision Cast Parts telling you, how many widgets they produced last month. This is a step beyond that. And I've seen some of these projects over the years where, the tail is wagging, the dog here. And you have so many metrics that you're trying to measure, you're trying to get feedback on, that it becomes a race to turn the spreadsheet, cells from red to green. And so I just caution us not to bite off too much, okay? That's all I have.
Councilor Anderson?
The process metrics are not things that the city already has in place, correct?
I think there are some that are already ongoing or in place.
Okay.
Yeah, this is more centralizing, either for creating new, or how are we organizing and centralizing those data collection points?
And this really, exactly. Across, I think on this one, there's a lot of things we don't do. On the other ones, there might be things that blend. Lily, what I appreciate so much about Lily is she's just like dove in, but she also dove in without, full knowledge of everything we do. I think she's provided that sort of, we're so in the weeds that she's kind of like throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And that's what we're talking about tonight is what sticks, what does stick out to you.
Yeah.
So some of these might be in our housing production strategy. We may not be doing them yet, but we've said there's something we're going to do over the next 4 years or whatever the horizon is of the housing production strategy. So
Yeah. And I guess that would be, you stole the words from my mouth, tying these into our existing plans, our housing production strategy, our climate goals, and the in-depth plans there. I struggle to commit ourselves to take these 3 things. It takes dollars to do these things.
Right.
And I don't want to build in an equity goal that we're not funding already, or that we're not prepared to fund.
Yeah.
It feels disingenuous to me. And I also think that there's a real discussion about, like, when it comes to making Milwaukee affordable, are these the 3 things we want to decide on? Are there other programs? I think, so I almost would, dare I say, bifurcate. The metrics that are status and lived experience, I think, are really, really great. The process metrics are really what I think the 5 of us can help with, tinkering and figuring out how we're actually going to measure them with the 2 following ones. But I would also echo what people are saying. I think it's really exciting to think about affordable housing in Milwaukee and all of these things in Milwaukee and how we're going to measurably move towards that in an equitable way. Really, really exciting. So I appreciate the work that you and our consultant team have done.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my turn before I call on Counselor Stavengerd, but I was puzzled by the use of the word metrics for the things under process, because to me, those are the tools or the programs. They're not the measurement. The impact status metrics strike me as the measurable metrics. And then, as was commented on, the lived experience one is a harder one to measure. But to me, the things under process are not really metrics. They're the programmatic or the tools or whatever that we could use to move the needle. And with that observation, I will say, I like the ones we have. None of these address renters. They're all about homeownership, and I'm big on homeownership, which I will discuss when we get around to discussing Sparrow in a few weeks. But I do think, we need to also keep renters in mind. And, we do have the rent assistance program that Counselor Stavengerd's been working on. But I mean, we might want to think about renters in here. And in addition to home repair, again, into this lump of what people spend on their housing comes the utilities and other things too, right? Okay, with that, I'll call on Counselor Stavengerd.
I did also want to clarify, am I allowed to respond, or do I wait till the end? Okay.
Sure.
Because I did want to just respond to the piece. Yes to renters assistance. I may have mentioned it as an example, but not maybe potentially as a listed here. Would I describe process, impact status, and lived experience as categories? The three combined are the metrics altogether for affordable housing.
And just to build on that, I really take your point, Mayor. The way they're listed here, they sound more like things to do. I think the metrics are hidden in the parentheses. So it'd be like number of participants in your home ownership grant programs and dollars awarded. But even that, I also agree with Counselor Anderson that feels more like once you guys have set the policy direction about what the programs are we should be doing, then those are more sort of widgety or sort of, data that we can capture, whereas the impact and the lived experience are really about, are we meeting this outcome, that big picture vision piece. So I think that's really helpful feedback for us to discuss further with Lily.
Absolutely. And I think the last point I just wanted to add that as we mentioned and listed these out, all of these also came from that Milwaukie Community Vision by 2040. So these are also accountability piece of this. These are things we committed to. Those are definitely also not set in stone. We're allowed to adapt and change and redirect. So just so that we understand that these aren't pulled from just the air, but this is from our own document we created in 2017. I answered that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. And I do think there are, as was commented on, there are housing, for this one, there are housing strategies and other documents that have been done that kind of probably need to be cross-fertilized here a little bit. But it'll be different on the other ones.
I was just wondering how do I say this? Well, okay, first of all, I was just wondering how the Equity Steering Committee has received these and what some of the feedback that you've gotten from the committee looks like, because, we all have our own lens of lived experience and professional or personal experience that we're looking at this through. And we all represent different identities and intersections, but we're not an extremely diverse group. So have you had conversation with the ESC about these, and what do they think?
Yeah, also a great question, because I'm absolutely interested. Just to kind of center us back to the timeline, this was pulled from our meeting from July 25th. So that was our latest ESC meeting. They haven't received the materials yet, as we just had them kind of developed in the past couple of weeks. Our August meeting that we have this week on Thursday is actually taking a pause. We have committed to the Milwaukie Community Events Fund that they're doing reviewings for those applications for this meeting. And then in September, we'll be talking about follow-up of the metrics. And when I'm back in November, I'll have more information to share.
Okay, that sounds great. Then I feel like I want to prioritize the input from the ESC.
Yeah.
and listen to them. And then I may have some ideas after that. But I really value the expertise and the experience that's on that group.
Yeah. And I do think that's that piece of that second question is how would you like to continue to be involved? If that is, you join us in maybe the following meeting after they sit, resonate, share their experiences. That could be another meeting we have joint again to have conversation.
That feels really good.
Okay, so more on this one, or are we ready to move on to the next one? I guess we're ready to move on to the next one. I'm not seeing any geese. Milwaukie is a safe and welcoming community.
And it's okay to say. Or no ads,
Or,
no
yeah.
changes, or I want to wait till we talk to the ESC.
Yeah.
Don't feel pressured to provide
Yeah.
comment.
Well, maybe, yeah. Do you want to start or do we want to just go by?
I think we could popcorn it.
Okay.
And I think, like, knowing that we haven't yet heard the thoughts from the ESC, I think that's a big lens for me in this. I don't want to dig into and dissect this as much until I hear what their reflections are.
Well, I would be reluctant to take things off before hearing their reflections, but I think the question that Gabriella posed to us about what's missing, do we think there's something missing? I think that's a good question for us to help flesh it out, even before it goes to the ESC, right? If we feel like something's missing. And what was your first question? Oh, what resonates with us? Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah.
I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't shut down conversation because I do want to hear from my colleagues here as well. But I think that there are ways that that systemic oppression and supremacy shows up in how we even discuss these metrics, how we even use metrics. And so I'm trying to bring up some concerns and some of the things that I'm hearing because we're digging in and we're dissecting this, but that is only one lens to look at this process. So I want to, with the work that we did in our equity retreat on council with Parfait and specifically the document that he handed out that looks at how white supremacy shows up in dominant culture processes. That comes to mind for me, and I'm sitting with it for a little bit. So I just want to invite that memory of that sheet to my colleagues as well, and hopefully then we can filter that into the conversation.
I appreciate that, but however, as an Iranian Muslim individual who's also married to a proud Latina and soon to be a father of 2 biracial children, I feel like I can discuss some of this from that lens as well. And for the safety part, I'm looking more at the lived experience metrics. I don't have an issue with the process metrics, but that's probably the biggest metric for me, is that lived experience metric. Because that has to do with police and those interactions, and we know how historically that has been. And I like at each one of them. Milwaukee's report that they feel safe. That's huge. That they feel welcome. That's even bigger. The youth factor in it. So yeah, I love the lived experience metrics. I don't have any issue with the process metrics and status metrics. Obviously, I'm going to hear out the ESC as well, but I wanted to not, downsize the diversity that I bring.
That was not my
comments?
intention, Counselor.
No, I'm not saying.
Other comments, questions? observations?
The only thing that I might, in the spirit of being additive, welcoming community, I think about the fact that we are such a predominantly white city. And I don't see anything about like new residents to the city and thinking about like, what does it mean to be welcoming in terms of the people who can come into this city from a host of different demographics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I had a similar thought about the things under process. They're all on the safety side of the phrase, of the outcome phrase, but not really the welcoming side. And I do think things you're doing, like the community events, the, Juneteenth and the new community events we hope to foster is one piece of that welcoming, but there's maybe more that could be under the welcoming rubric. Yeah. Council President?
Well, sort of following the theme of the welcoming, I've always kind of been concerned that, we've had some growth here and I'm not sure that we've done much to reach out to new residents. And so I don't know what the metric is.
Yeah.
How have they been touched? How are they informed? That kind of thing. And so, I've had that concern, but I don't know if it's a valid concern or not, So, I'm trying, I don't know where it fits into the three columns, but, how do we reach out to new residents?
Yeah.
How do they find out what's going on?
Yeah. What are those communication channels and engagement strategies piece of that? I see it fall, because I think it's a valid concern and I see it falling under lived experiences. How are new residents informed? What's our outreach strategies to?
Maybe it's not a problem. I don't know. But, if there's a gap, how do we close that gap?
Yeah.
Well, and a few months ago, when we talked about NDAs and the NDA, the new finance and stuff, we talked about, wanting the NDAs to be more welcoming and maybe something tying that into here about how people feel about attending their NDA meeting and,
That also brought me to thinking about the Milwaukie being accessible and welcoming piece of that, of what is the transparency of involvement to meaningfully get involved with Milwaukie? How do residents know about government functions, even in that piece? And NDAs could even be trainings to improve welcoming or outreach.
Okay, if nothing else on that one, we'll go to
Okay.
the next one.
I'll transition. Thank you all again too for your just feedback around what does safe mean for different people of different identities? How are those spaces being set for inclusion at work and relationship building? And what does it mean to be welcoming, right? That's the inclusion efforts piece of this work. Where's outreach? Where's communication and information sharing? Okay.
Anybody want, I'll just go with geese at this point. If anybody wants to. Okay. Counselor Koster-Body.
These are also a good metrics. I know these will probably need tweaking as we get closer to the hubs deals being going in. But my question is, because something that I've heard from the public too is what mechanisms we have in place to ensure that what goes in our hubs are what the community wants, and not just what a developer may want. So maybe some sort of metric to measure, like, are the right businesses going into these hubs? Are these hubs being used as they were intended? And more specifically, though, to whether or not it's what the community members have wanted. Because I know that's been a concern that's been brought to our attention before. Other than that, I think this is all a starting point. And I think this is a good place to start, considering that, hubs isn't quite there yet. And we're still working on that process. There's some pretty big metrics in here, so. But again, it's a good starting off point.
I did want to clarify, Councillor Crosser-Body, you're asking almost essentially like, what's the government influence over kind of private development and decision-making of what businesses?
Or the public's influence, not really the government's, but that community's influence. What influence does that community have in ensuring that developments that go in these hubs are what that community's
Yeah,
has been waiting for?
thank you.
Any other comments on this one?
I would just say there is a lot of, this is an area where I would be especially interested in seeing what the ESC can build from the ground up. Because I think our hubs is, as we think about phase 3 of the hubs, it's in some ways, and it's, I wouldn't say in its infancy, because this is a program that's been going for so long, but there, like, I really want to see, this focuses a lot on businesses in a way that I think removes the community. And I think the hubs are about the lived experience of the community in the hub and transforming the way that we live and socialize and creating those third spaces. And so I don't know exactly what those metrics might be, but this is an area especially where I want to see more community feedback because I don't see it, at least in the initial version of the hub.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is an interesting one because I think that, you know, you can almost look at this as, you know, some sort of neighborhood baseline. Because we're not going to have any real feedback on the hubs for who knows how long. And so, you know, I think that this baseline might be a repeat of what we heard and what we want out of the hubs. And so, you know, I would just say that, you know, we're not going to get a lot of feedback on hubs because they're not there, but, you know, we may get some feedback on what they want to see in hubs. And we've heard some of that already. And so I would just look at this as a baseline. I'm not sure what value we get out of it, at least in the initial cut on the metrics, you know, harvesting. I don't know.
Counselor, go ahead. No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say, I think that speaks to like, where is Milwaukie potentially nonprofit, government, like grant programs for hubs, economic development, there we go. Programs available for public, new local businesses. And I do want to also clarify on this piece, I know we're talking about hubs, but the other piece of this, and I think Counselor Anderson spoke to the third spaces of there's parks as well that we're talking to, a public amenities piece of this. And transportation, right? Access, sidewalks, safety, roads, and that piece of this too that I just wanted to throw in there and remind us for other pieces of this.
Counselor Stavanger has had hers. Okay.
Mine's just a quick response to the council president. I think it's a really good point. But I think what gets me excited about this, particularly the lived experience ones, is if you take our biannual community survey, which is the only right now statistically valid data set that we collect regularly. If we're starting to ask questions like this, that you're right, were asked back when hubs was, you know, first conceptualized and as it's gone through, but we get data that allows us to disaggregate by race, disaggregate by socioeconomic status, by age. I think it'll help us really understand and then track as the hub's interventions go in, who's benefiting and who's maybe being burdened by some of the changes we're proposing. So I take your point. I think in this space, and frankly in a lot of them, it's going to be in the baselining space for a while, but I get really excited about being able to cross tab and dissect the data if we can build these into that community survey and get a robust demographic data set.
So do the questions in the survey change every year?
They don't, because you do want longitudinal, but they can.
Ask the question.
They can. The last time we added in our values questions for this exact purpose, that we care about our values. We want to know if the community feels like we're living out our values, and we had to start tracking that. So, and it also may raise the question of, do we, as we build this data-driven culture, do we need to be doing a annual survey instead of a biannual survey. And one is more about outcomes and one is more about, service expectations. I think there's one of the final step in the scope we have Lily helping us with is, so this is what you want to know, here's how you measure it. And she's been really good at scolding Gabriella and I every time we're like, but how would we do that? She goes, we'll get there. We'll get there. Because she wants to make sure the metrics we're selecting are meaningful. But as you know, the proof's in the pudding and how you can actually gather the data.
Counselor Stavanger?
I had two thoughts. I don't know, were you thinking of, oh, okay. They were different, and so I didn't want to interrupt the flow. The first thing that came to mind here is the work that the Community Advisory Committee has done with the urban renewal area. And I'm glad that Joseph is here because I'm not sure that my memory will tie together all of these pieces. But the one thing that might be applicable, maybe in the hubs conversation, is that we had wanted to build a connection with culturally specific economic development partners. And Joseph has reached out to a number of folks. And I think, the hope there was that there would be a technical assistance resource for businesses that wanted to start up in the URA, which is, like downtown and then the Milwaukie Marketplace area. But I don't know if it would be possible that technical assistance could be accessible across the hubs too. So that might be something to think about. And then the other thing that came to mind for me was, I was in a meeting yesterday with the Public Health Advisory Council. They're updating their community health needs assessment, and it's something that's updated every 3 years or every 5 years. But this time it's a regional effort, and they have a lot of organizations that are based in Multnomah County that are going to be doing culturally specific outreach, specifically around, like health metrics and walkability and public transit access. And it made me think that it might be a good opportunity to connect with those organizations because they may not know our community as well. And it seems like it's an, potential for folks to not be aware of this survey work that's being done. And they're doing focus groups, and they were going to provide a list of organizations to the group that met. So when I get those, if it's okay, I'll just send it. I could send it to the whole council if you're interested. But it might be a chance for someone else's data assessment to be something that we can pull from, because that is something that's updated every 3 or 5 years.
Okay, further questions or comments on this one? Okay, I think you can move on to the next one. Thank you.
Okay, I think this is our fourth one. Milwaukee is adaptive to the realities of changing climate.
I liked a lot of these measures. They're not all in our control. I think building code is not so much in our control, but it's something we can work on at the state level, but yeah, no, I thought they were good.
I'll also
Comments,
just use
questions?
this as a quick chance to say, in addition to the ESC as a super important lens, Gabrielle and I also recognize we have staff working in all these areas. We will absolutely be engaging them in their subject matter expertise in refining these.
For sure, yeah.
So my observation is that the metrics are heavily skewed toward emergencies. And, number 2 under the status impact metrics is, energy focused, and as well as number 3 under process metrics. But I just thought it was too heavily skewed toward emergency preparedness, which is important. But I think that we probably, my observation is there's probably some more opportunity to focus more on climate and energy conservation and all the things in the climate plan.
Well, and climate, some of that dovetails with the first one about affordability, right? Some of the adaptations and improvements that you can make to your house make it more affordable to be able to stay in your house, or, you know, to reduce your bills and stuff like that. I think Counselor, thought you were next.
If I'm trying to read the cards of how all this emergency preparedness got in, our phrase in the community vision statement says, Milwaukee is a resilient community adaptive to the realities of a changing climate and prepared for emergencies such as the Cascadia event. I almost feel like that vestigial phrase at the very end roped in emergency preparedness into our climate metrics. And this is where, if other people feel differently, I'm totally fine being wrong. But I also think that that's to focus more on climate change specifically. I think there's a wealth of things that we can do there, and emergency preparedness can be its own goal that we study. But I'm happy to be wrong here, and I think this is one where we lean on our community partners, and if they say these are one and the same, sure.
Yeah, I'd actually rather hear from you.
I think that's a really good point. I do, and I might be wrong, but I think there were probably two outcomes. One was about climate mitigation, reducing carbon emissions, and one was about climate adaptation, recognizing we're a little too late in some ways and climate change is here. So totally agree with you, Will. I bet though, I think when you guys did your prioritization, the adaptation one rose higher than just in terms of immediate priority need of being able to track that, because now we have smoke season and ice season and all these other things that people are living through year in, year out.
Councilor Khosrowshahi?
Yeah, I was actually, because I know we do to a certain degree, but, you know, speaking on the climate mitigation part, like, is there any I don't see any metric on, you know, CO2 reduction, like year over year CO2 reduction. Like, I know we do that with our, like, solar arrays, right? Like, we can tell how much CO2 we've reduced from the library with our solar arrays, but
Right.
because we have a lot of climate action plans that we have one climate action plan, but a lot of portions of that plan that have been implemented since the inception. But what's the effect of it overall on our CO2 emissions? Have we dented a lot? Because I know we've had a lot, like, in that plan. We have, you know, the biggest ones is our industrial park, you know, our transportation, and then the stuff that people buy and consume outside of here. So if we can measure that, like, is there a way to measure on a yearly basis or biennial basis?
And we do a
mitigation
greenhouse
part.
gas. That's a great question. We do a greenhouse gas inventory about every 5 years. Peter might tell me if that's completely wrong, but it's an expensive endeavor, but we do that. And again, I think I have a feeling that Lily was sort of focused on the adaptation side, but what I'm kind of hearing is don't forget the mitigation side too. That's a really important, you know, piece for us to continue tracking as well.
Because I mean, we have that goal of 2040, and
Right.
unless we can measure it, how are we going to know if we
Yeah.
ever get to the carbon neutrality? But yeah, other than that, I mean, I like the energy, the emergency stuff, and sustainable energy production programs, the home weatherization programs, awesome. Because again, we've been on a list for the county for like 2 years now. So that, yeah, that doesn't help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on this one?
I did lastly want to add, at the city, we also recently hired our new climate and natural resources manager. I have a meeting with them this week to discuss kind of what, and Peter, about ongoing climate efforts, because again, this is that piece of Lily's suggested metrics, and this is, I think, my role, Emma's role, as well as the city and our internal staff who are already leading this work. It's where are we centralizing that data and communication, because Peter will know, and so that's follow up with different departments and their ongoing efforts and work.
They all met Katie like
Oh, great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you passed in the hallway. You were two ships passing in the night.
Well, I'm going to see them this week, so, or tomorrow. Oh, it's Wednesday tomorrow. There we go.
Okay, great. Good to know. So one more, I believe.
Yeah, final one. Okay. Milwaukee's government is transparent and accessible.
So when you were talking earlier about welcoming, I thought about this one, and I thought about the Leadership Academy that we do. I do think, and that, that kind of dovetails with youth. Is there a youth version of the Leadership Academy? But also with language, is there a, I know that's not that it could be a heavy lift. But I think it's something to think about, is the Leadership Academy as a way of reaching out to populations that don't engage, if we can make it more attractive, and maybe it's, childcare, or, I don't know what the factors are. But I do think there's kind of a nexus between transparent, because that is one of the things that I think makes us most transparent to residents. It's only 15 or 20 people each year, but for those people, they really have a much more in-depth understanding about, what the city government is and who does what and all of that. So I did think about the Leadership Academy when I was reading this one. Other comments from people?
Just excited to see the inclusion of youth engagement. And I'll note that one of the conversations that I had with some of the youth that are, that were appointed to our boards and committees was that they were very interested in having a conversation with the Equity Steering Committee. So I know that there are a lot of things, on the calendar, but if that could be, I don't know, something that's in the queue. I know that there are some young people who are interested.
Councilor Kosher-Body?
Yeah, I this would probably be in the lived experience metrics. And I guess maybe you guys can figure out how to measure this really, but what I'd be interested in is government transparent and accessible is, how often, people report that their electeds are meeting with them where they are, right? Because we talk about that a lot, is meeting people where they are. Well, what does that exactly mean to the people? And is it happening? Are electeds taking meetings with individuals? Are they meeting them in spaces where they feel safe? Are they, is it only a meeting we take at City Hall? Is it just in the spaces where we pick to go? I mean, these are also lived experience part of an accessible government. That was one thing when I first moved here in 2020. I reached out to every counselor, and all but one sat down and met with me. And that was a big deal for me, right? Especially just moving here with my wife. And that made me feel like I had a voice that, at least 4/5 were willing to listen to. So, if there's a way to measure that, or at least gauge that from people through surveys, that's another.
Absolutely.
The mayor recently was talking about what makes Milwaukie special and mentioned the idea that you can get engaged in Milwaukie really quickly if you want to. And I know that there are people who have done that. I'm one of them, but at the same time, I think about the demographics of the people who do, or what that looks like to, I think there's an upside here. How easy is it for someone to get involved? And I'm not proposing actual metrics. I'm not doing a good job here, but that intangible accessibility, I think, is really important. And I think it is, I think part of this to me is also, we have, I think when people come with a complaint to council, seeing is that complaint acted on, and who are the groups that, if you have a room filled with old white residents who own homes who come to city council and ask for something to be changed, are they more likely to be listened to than a group who isn't reflected, or are they not even showing up? I think that's something that I don't know how we study in a metric, but I would be really curious about holding ourselves accountable in that way too.
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts? Observations? You know, it's interesting to me. I see the second one under impact about public comment and hearing engagement, attendance at city council meetings. So this summer I attended, you know, we have no attendance at our city council meetings unless there's a hot button topic like the 29th Avenue Greenway, and then we have huge attendance. I went to the Oregon Mayors Association conference this summer, and it was the mayor of Redmond who said they have about 50 people at every meeting. And I was like, really? I was like there, and he didn't, I need to follow up with him and find out, you know, are there that many people that are upset about something? Or are people just like, they kind of like watching the sausage made? I don't know what exactly, what, maybe they serve food, yeah, maybe they serve food. Anyway. That's a hard one for us to use as a measure, I think, because we don't generally have attendance unless somebody's upset about something, so.
The other piece I was going to add was proclamations as well, gets good attendance. And I know, I want to go back to what Councilor Crosser-Brady had also said about connection and interactions with elected officials. I mentioned previously, like showing up matters. And I've run into you, Mayor, into different community events, as we'll have, I believe it's the Vietnamese Lunar New Year event coming up soon, or Mid-Autumn Festival. That's what it is. I have communications with Mr. Tao around the next event that's happening, and I will forward you that invite. But that is that piece we could track, is what is our attendance in different community events, that cultural specific engagement piece of this.
Yeah.
You know, and speaking of meetings, have we ever tried like personally as electeds inviting groups to our meetings? Not because there's a topic that pertains to them, but just saying, hey, we're having a meeting. We haven't heard from this group in a while. Let's personally reach out as the mayor, as council president, as an elected, say, hey, I'd like to invite you to a meeting, you know, come see what your city's all about, what we're doing, not through social media, but like a direct email.
You mean an ethnically based group?
Well, it could be that, or it could just be, you know, just people like, if I got an email from the mayor personally inviting me to a meeting, you know, that would probably feel better than me seeing on social media, right? Because it's more personable.
Right.
And maybe our outreach needs to be a little bit more personable than what it is.
I did get, we have to make sure also with some community members, and I've engaged them through my email, were concerns of spam. So if you do get an email from your mayor, there is this, how do you also clarify to them, I promise it's me.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting idea. I mean, it's kind of, that's about, if you just want somebody to come to the meeting because you want them to experience what a meeting's like, that's one thing, and they may or may not find that of interest. If you're wanting them to be here to present, you know, we can put, that's the kind of thing where we can put it on the agenda with two counselors or whatever. You just have to work it into the forecaster kind of thing, you know. But if there are groups that, that you're thinking of, and I don't want to get into naming groups here or anything, but, let's just, that's always a potential.
Yeah. I meant more like all those emails we have for Engage Milwaukie. Imagine if we just did an email blast from a counselor for every meeting, and you just gotta, because Nicole's send out, or the city will send out, I get them from you, so that's why I said your name. But like on my personal email, I get notifications of like, oh, Linwood neighborhood, oh, city council meeting. But imagine if you got an email straight from, right? And like you did like a MailChimp thing, where you did an email blast of all the constituents in your in your book, or you use the Engage Milwaukie database, and you directly said, hey, come to a meeting, check us out.
Yeah.
You know, like, don't just engage for the survey, like check out a meeting too. You know what I mean? It just maybe a more personable touch.
Yeah. There is that before we get to also the communication and email. There is like electronic difference in accessibility usage that people also don't know how to access, don't know how to manage. So definitely. So I think like setting that first, meeting them in person of some sort, one-on-one engagement, then following up with that interaction. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, that got us through, oh, are you wanting to?
If it's okay for one
Yeah,
last
go
thing, I do have to say, like, these meetings, sure, maybe Joseph is really excited and likes to sit in and listen, but the average person, like, there's not that back and forth that makes it rewarding for them in some ways to be here. And I think as we think about like the process side of things, maybe there is, maybe we can think about like, how do we structurally change our meetings to make it so the community might want to come, not just thinking about like, let's change the metric on one side, but let's change the like input. Maybe a future policy swim lane, dare I say.
Okay, so that's feedback on the outcomes, and then you will come back in November.
I do, yeah.
But you did have some other questions, as I recall.
Oh, that's right.
Well, that was supposed to be the first two.
two.
It was supposed to be the first two.
And I, keeping an eye on time, and I want to make sure we do this efficiently. But I do think, as Gabriella and I, we've talked about, we'll be continuing to talk about this with ESC, continuing to talk about this with staff. I really wanted to make sure we were getting direction from you all on how you want to be included. I've heard, some interest in another joint meeting, so that's something we can look to put in the schedule. But I've also heard that you're really comfortable and confident in the ESC being a driving force in this process. Is that, an appropriate amount of community engagement on this metric development piece? Is there any broad public outreach you want us to be doing on it? It's a wonky thing. So I always think when we think about public engagement and the spectrum of public participation, think about, the promise you're making to the public. And so if we benefit from that, we are happy to do it. But I think you also have in the ESC a really rock star group of community members who are really ready to wonk out on this.
I mean, go ahead. If you had something, yeah.
I was just gonna answer the question. My only issue with broadening the scope outside the ESC is that typically, like the 200 that Council President Massey mentioned, of the group of people tend to be a majority of all white individuals. So you don't really get that full. So that's my only hesitation. I don't want that to drown out the ESC and their voices.
I would maybe ask the question to the ESC.
Okay.
If they feel like there's other community, and if, yeah. Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling on that either way. I'd be curious to hear their, but you're right, it's pretty wonky, and yeah, how you would do that to the average person, but, it doesn't seem to me it lends itself to, using Engage Milwaukie, for example, but is there some broader meeting of ESC members thought there was a point? Would there be a broader meeting where every ESC member brought 2 other people, or something like that, yeah. I mean, we have a pretty big ESC though, so, yeah.
I'm comfortable with the ESC proceeding. I'm not sure I see, huge benefit from enlarging the number of participants. So I feel comfortable with that.
You have your, no, Counselor Anderson, you have your. Okay, other comments, observations?
Okay, I'm hearing at this time, we won't do further community engagement, but we will ask that question to the ESC and make sure they get the chance to weigh in too. And then are we comfortable with, so in terms of next steps for your engagement, we'll work with the ESC and you on another joint date later in the year to wrap this up.
Okay.
Okay. Gabriella, take us to the last slide.
Okay. So yes, I think you started us off, Mayor Beatty, about I will return in November with update and input from ESC, as well as our tracks 1 and 3. But I did want to end on another positive note and excitement around this work of kind of a pre-glimpse of what's coming in November was some equity exciting things, milestones, accomplishments. We had mentioned the Milwaukie Community Events Fund with our events, and we'd received a total of 8 applications that ESC will be reviewing together and deciding funding distribution this Thursday. I'm so excited. We relaunched our internal staff equity, our internal equity committee made up of staff of different departments that I'm really excited for. We have our second meeting tomorrow. And the third point I wanted to highlight here was I also was part of the reviewer for our on-call community engagement and strategic communication services contract. Yes, we're about 18 of those responsive submissions, 13 of those firms were COVID certified. So that was something really excited that you'll hear from Kelly Tucker and I believe Jason Wax maybe in the next regular session potentially about their efforts and that work with our new procurement system on Bonfire, but also outreach efforts that they had led. But big milestone accomplishment, was really excited to see that. And most of those are local based too. So
Nice.
thank you.
Great.
Okay. Thank you
Great.
all.
Well, thank you, Gabriella. Thank you so much. All right, and now we have a public hearing. Joseph has to do the public hearing, huh? Gets to.
Good.
So, although noticed as a public hearing, the public hearing on the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve land use file number VR 2024-003 has concluded. The purpose for today's meeting is to confirm the final order prepared by staff at the direction of council reflects the final decision made by council at the August 6th hearing. As the matter has concluded, the hearing will not be reopened and no vote will be taken. Let's proceed to the staff presentation of the final order.
Great. Good evening, Council. I'm Joseph Brilio, Acting Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director. I am here I'm the proxy, by proxy, for Senior Planner Vera Coleus, who is, I believe, online. So I wanted to save the trip down and allow her just to speak briefly virtually, and I'm here just in case anything else happens. But Vera, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, great. Hi. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Again, I'm here to just check in and see if any of you have any comments or questions about the final order that was included as part of the packet. It was intended to reflect the hearing that was held on August 6th and reflect the decision that was made by council at that hearing. So there is a section in the final order, section 4, that talks about the modification to the findings, where we were asked to only respond to the findings to one of the items that about minimizing impacts to surrounding properties, and as well as to remove one of the conditions of approval that related to the fence. So wanted to just check in and see if the language that was included in the final order reflected your decision from August 6th. And if so, then I can move forward with the notice of decision and issuing that tomorrow. Happy to answer any questions.
So did anyone have any questions for Vera?
No
Seeing
questions.
none, does any member of council object to the contents of the final order as not reflecting the decision reached at the August 6th hearing? I'm not seeing any objections there. So staff will proceed with issuing the final order. We do not need a vote again? Okay. Okay, I didn't realize, okay. Well, with that, I will read this little LUBA appeal information. Is there anything else to do before I do that? No?
No?
Oh, Vera went away.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Once a final order is issued, any party withstanding may appeal the decision of the city council to the State Land Use Board of Appeals, also known as LUBA, according to the rules adopted by that board. If you have questions, please call the planning department staff. Okay, I think that's it for that one. And now we have quarterly council budget review. And
I gave Michael the night off because you guys are 1 month into the next fiscal year. This is a pretty benign update. What we talked previously about during the budget process about council's desire to keep kind of a closer eye on the council departmental budget, just so that there's greater awareness of how much you have left, what you're all are spending your budget on. So what we did is we scheduled into the forecaster every quarter. We'll come back and give you a report. Truly, because we are so near into the fiscal year, I don't even have latest actuals, and I hardly any of you have spent any money. Even if I could give you an actuals report. So what I wanted to do today was really just remind you what's in the council budget, answer any questions you might have about that. I will say what's been exciting to us is I think more, I'm speaking a little bit for Scott, but more than in the past, we've been fielding some questions from council about, I might want to use my budget for this, or could I use my budget for that? And it's raised some interesting internals, like staff and finance department questions. We don't have adopted policies. It's not like thou shalt only spend your council budget on X or Y. So it is open for your discussion and your direction. But thank you, Nicole, for pulling this up. I know it's still kind of minuscule. To give you just sort of a broad sense of what discretionary funds are in here. Within the other line of materials and services, I'm trying to see if I can read this. It looks a little different than, anyway, there is some money what we earmarked in there for lobbying efforts if council decides they want to spend any money on lobbying. And then within, the mayor is allocated $5,000 in materials and services each fiscal year. Each councilor is allocated $3,000. And then we also have some general meals and travel expenses as well. So this more was making good on our promise to bring this back. If anyone does have questions or items you'd like to discuss about the council budget, please let me know.
yeah, I mean, I notice it's, labeled as education and training. I mostly use mine, for conferences. So I guess that's education and training, the LOC conference, the Mayor's Association conference. I guess there's a question for us about, it came up recently that the Street Trust was holding their awards, and there was some talk about, pooling money to sponsor a table, and I don't guess anybody pursued that, but we do get invited to a lot of fundraisers for a lot of causes that I think, we all probably like to support, things like the Clackamas Service Center and the Clackamas Women's Services and, the fire department that does a lot of the, whatever it's called, Clackamas Emergency Services Foundation that does the Operation Santa and does a lot of things for families at Christmas time. I guess I've never spent if I go to those things, I usually pay for it myself. I've never spent for a ticket out of my council budget on that. But I don't think there's any, as Emma kind of indicated, I don't think there's anything that precludes us from doing that. I guess, I just wanted to sort of air that thing. I mean, you will get invited to a lot of dinners and you won't, probably be able to do that many of them. But when there's something that's important to you that you want to do, I mean, I think that's okay. But I guess, maybe it's a policy question we should discuss.
Yeah, I guess I I didn't have and still don't have a clear view of, the parameters for the expenditures of these funds. But at the same time, I guess I would feel more comfortable if we had some guidelines or something. I mean, I would be concerned if we just kind of said, spend it on what you wanted to, and then if we got into questionable areas, it could be a slippery slope. So I don't know, is there some guidance out there that we could plagiarize?
I'm sure there is. I can definitely take that back as an action item for Michael and I to kind of explore other metro area cities. Do they have policies about how they're spending council budget dollars, and see what we can find. I'm not aware personally of any, but I wouldn't be shocked. We love writing policies.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Okay, any other thoughts, any other?
The other just, things that have come up, and I mentioned we've gotten some requests we haven't expected, is like the purchasing of some materials for folks, or mailers that individual counselors would want to do. And again, so far, we haven't said no, because there's no grounds for us to say no. But I think in the case of every counselor who's talked to me, I've kind of suggested we daylight that, in this sort of a setting, just so everyone's aware and doesn't feel like they're playing from a different set of guidelines.
A mailer to invite somebody to something, or to promote something the city's doing?
I can speak to that one.
Okay.
So in the legislature, they will spend after each session, you'll spend your budget, a little bit of your office budget on a mailer to say, here's what we did, here's what is happening. And so I was like, does council ever do a collective mailer about what's happening at council, or just to advertise to that random person who might say, we have a city council, that these are the things that we, but these are the things that we do as a council. So it was my chance at daylighting something that I'd experienced in my workplace.
Well, that's an interesting idea. I mean, I think to some degree the pilots for that, that's what you can use your pilot article for, but I mean, I don't have any strong, I mean, I guess that goes into, sort of, it'd be interesting to know what other cities are doing, on that as well. Yeah.
Sounds like I have some homework to go find out what other cities are doing for council budget, but that's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that? Nope. All right. Then we'll go to council reports. Oh, and we have an order on here. So Councilor Stavenjord.
I just have two updates. At our last, at our last regular meeting, I mentioned that I was part of the DA's advisory council, and we sent a letter to the State Criminal Justice Coalition asking for a reconsideration of the deflection application. And so I just wanted to mention for those that are watching and following along at home that there's been coverage in the newspaper that reversal was granted. And so Clackamas County will receive funding for their deflection program. There are two items that I'd like to add, just as context there. There was one modification made to the proposal, which is the removal of a deputy district attorney from the proposal. And I think that speaks to the criticism that the county received around this being more, the intent around deflection being more community service-based. And I think that is unfortunately at odds with the infrastructure that we have in Clackamas County, because all of the work has been done through the DA's office with a few community partners, but there's not enough of a self-sustaining network at this point. So they have made that modification. I don't know what changes that will look like as that program rolls out, but the advisory committee has asked for additional data tracking, and the DA's office has granted that request. So in addition to what's required through the Criminal Justice Coalition, then there's even more metrics that look at the effectiveness and the efficacy of that program. So if that's of interest to folks, I can share that with council at a later date.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? When you say they removed an assistant DA, you mean they removed funding for that from the deflection funding? Or that you mean that the assistant DA can't even have any role in it's just not funded out of the state funding?
Yeah, good question. The proposal that was put forth to the state listed a new position, a deputy district attorney position that would provide kind of like offsetting support so that the DA, the senior DA that has been running their diversion program would be able to enhance their existing offerings. And so that they would be able to deflect people. I think sometimes people use deflection and diversion interchangeably, but in this particular instance, they're very distinct and separate definitions of what that looks like. And it all ties back to involvement with the criminal legal system. So the intent behind that is to make sure that there's not contact and you actually deflect away from that program. And then, so the criticism at the state level is that, by nature of having it housed in the DA's office, that there is connection to the system. And unfortunately, there's not another alternative at this point. So the compromise was made to remove that position from the application. And then the application was approved. So I'm happy to keep council updated on that. You can add it to my monitoring list if you'd like. The other update is on the screen. This will look familiar to you because we have addressed this in a previous meeting. It's been in packets in the previous meetings. None of the language has changed. And so just with the help of our amazing assistant, this is the values document from the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. This discusses values around transportation leading into the transportation package discussions at the legislature. And the ask has been from the C4 committee that cities approve the use of their logo to sign on to this letter. So we have discussed this previously, and my ask to you tonight is, are you okay with the submission of our logo?
Any concerns? Everyone's, do we need a motion? Shall we have a motion?
My concern would be the phrase, finish what was promised in House Bill 2017 and House Bill 3035, including the I-205 widening and bridge. Well, I think the Abernathy Bridge is definitely in need of some repairs. I don't think that the I-205 widening is the most prescient funding priority that Clackamas County is experiencing, and the cost of that project is really, really ballooning. And so I know these projects and these types of investments are one of the reasons why Rep. Power voted against House Bill 2017 when she was in the legislature. And I don't think that those investments are something that we should continue to advocate for as a county. I think there are better uses in Clackamas County for some of our funds as we're advocating.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Counselor. Hearing this, is this an item that would prohibit us from adding Milwaukee's logo?
Yeah, I guess that is the question at this juncture. I mean, this document has, come out in a few iterations now, and it is moving forward as the county's statement about, whatever they call it, principles or values for do we want to be a team player and be part of that document, or do we want to make a statement by not joining that document, I guess is the question, right?
Yep, and I'm happy to articulate if we decide the latter, I'm happy to articulate that to the staff of the county and the C4 members. I'm also alternatively happy to bring forth the concern around that particular statement and then indicate that upon entering into legislative advocacy, the city of Milwaukee will not be advocating for that particular element. So if you see that as a compromise, Councilor, I'm happy to add that specificity.
So you're saying approve use of our logo, but make that clear to okay.
But that's follow-on action, I think is what I heard. Is that follow-on action for advocacy beyond this letter? Is that like step 2?
I think that it could be step 2. If we are engaging in conversation about the transportation package at the state level, writing letters to support elements of it, I think that we can safely say that, you know, that area is problematic to at least one or more of our counselors. And we may choose to strike that from letters that we would put forth, like from our council. But I don't know that removing that item is a sticking point to say that we wouldn't contribute our logo. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not really making sense tonight.
From my experience and vantage point in the legislature, I think it's one line there, but I think a huge conversation in a 25 package is what we do with the promises made in 2017. That was passed in 2017 and House Bill 2017, very convenient. And so I think that with that in mind, like it's such a small part of the letter, but I think that it has outsized implications. And I know I wouldn't be comfortable signing on. I'm happy to be the lone no vote on this, but I think that there are much more important investments that we can be making in our transportation network other than highway widening projects. And I worry that all the other values captured in this document are lost if we continue to invest in these projects that are not really fiscally viable.
Question, with that said, would you then have an issue with to support housing production and economic opportunities? The transportation package should improve the operations of regional freight routes, bridges, and arterials?
No.
Just the widening of the freeway?
The widening of the I-205 freeway. Yeah.
I feel, I feel like we're potentially putting Councilor Stevensjorn in an awkward position because we did bring this forward a couple of times. I brought it forward after the retreat, and she brought it forward at least one other time. And we didn't express those objections, and it's kind of down. And you did raise a concern about that before. I do remember that. But I guess I didn't realize how strong the objection was. I think we're past wordsmithing at the C4. Am I wrong about that?
At the C4 table, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm double checking let's see. There was conversation about clarifying that language. And I'm trying to look back through the track changes version because I do remember bringing that up with members of the committee. And I know that they made a modification to that. And I want to just double check and look at the language. So I could do that while we do the rest of the reports.
Okay.
And then if you're okay, we can come back to this.
Circle back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Councilor Kosrabati, have you got council reports?
Not really reports from my committee assignments, more so just from some meetings that I've had. I did meet with the North Clackamas Chamber CEO, Jay Jones, probably about a week, maybe longer than that, maybe a week and a half ago. We just talked about the possibility or the potential of having a chamber extension or a chamber chapter set up in Milwaukie. That would be obviously an extension of the chamber, but would be not just for downtown Milwaukie businesses, but for Milwaukie businesses in general. And the potential of having somebody from the chamber be the contact person there and be able to be some sort of a welcoming person to the city and to some of the resources the city offers for businesses, kind of just be a resource point person almost, just for incoming businesses or businesses that are here that haven't been formally introduced, I guess. So that just some of the, I mean, I know there's been a want for some sort of a business association here in Milwaukie for quite some time. We did have the Downtown Milwaukie Business Association. I was a former member before it shut down. But I think sustaining it through the chamber would probably be a better idea, and it'd probably be more sustainable and be in place longer, and probably be a better outreach arm for businesses in Milwaukie as well. And probably for us as well, for staff and just in general, you know, having that connection there would be good. So we just started talking about that stuff. And I also, as I mentioned earlier, I met with Habitat for Humanity.
Before you move on,
Yes.
so you will come back with
Yes, I'll
more
come
on
back with
that?
more,
There's
yeah.
nothing at this point?
No, nothing
from
more. It was
Jay?
just,
Okay.
but there is a mutual desire to do that.
Okay.
Jay's interested in doing that. He's actually been wanting to do that.
Okay.
And obviously, you know, the local small businesses in Milwaukie have been interested in something like that too for a while. So I'll find out more. It's in its infancy, but I'll find out more as we start discussing that further, and then, you know, eventually give more direction, see how we want to handle that. I did also meet with Habitat for Humanity. That one was also not just about Sparrow, but it was also about incentives that Habitat currently sees from other jurisdictions and maybe not see from us to help, because Habitat does want to be able to build in Milwaukie. They're a very unique structure on how they do things. The builds they have, they make sure that every home they build does not take more than 30% of the homeowner's income, monthly income. On top of that, they have very unique financing that helps them be able to get interest rates down like 4%. We do have about 600 affordable units coming online here. Most of them are rentals. I'm assuming not many of them are home ownership opportunities. That's a lot, and that's something that we're doing more in the region than any other jurisdiction, I would say. But I also do think that there's a gap and a need there for the home ownership opportunities that we've talked about before. And I think Habitat for Humanity actually gives they have a good foundation. They've been around. They know what to look for. They know how to do these things. They just need the land to do it and some of the incentives. So I did share that with our, not new, but our now official city manager, Emma Sager, and she did provide me with a side-by-side comparison. So maybe at a future discussion, this could be something that's brought at a study session to look at what we're not doing, what we're currently doing, and where we could meet Habitat, because they do provide some pretty unique opportunities. They do have some projects going on right now. They're doing more multi-unit stuff too, so that's a big plus. And it was something that, you know, again, going back to the scattered sites, that the county was interested in working with Habitat for Humanity on some of those locations, and Habitat themselves were interested in those as well. Yeah, that's about the sum of that meeting. And I'm going to meet with them again once we get a little bit further down the road and closer to the Sparrow stuff, because I would like to see what if we do get incentives in their favor, what they could potentially do there as well. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President?
So the audit committee had our first meeting with Moss Adams on Monday night. And so what came across from there was, the promise, I think, of expertise, clarity, and bench. We met with our two primary contacts will be the engagement reviewer, Ashley Oston, who's a partner in the company, and Amanda McCleary Moore, who's be the concurring reviewer. Interestingly, they'll be doing, the hands-on work with us, but there's actually a remote delegated engagement reviewer who doesn't really meet the city staff. All she does is just a third-party blind review of what's going on, which is encouraging to me. So we talked about the required communications of the audit committee to governance. And I kind of felt bad because we kind of focused on negative things. I think we're still dealing with a hangover from the past year or so. And so they talked about the required communications, and we kind of focused to make sure that it's in their list of required communications about difficulty encountered in performing the audit, corrected and uncorrected misstatements, and that kind of thing. So we felt pretty good that we were going to get a clear and a statement of what's going on. One of the questions that we focused on was we have certain touch points or a rhythm that they have to come back and talk to us on. So we had the meeting in August, and then there'll be another meeting in December. But I kind of ask if you, would they come to us between those times if they found, deficiencies? And the answer was yes, they would do that. They normally do that. And so that they would bring those findings of concern to the audit chair in between those scheduled meetings, which I appreciated and that kind of thing. So the audit has begun. They've started the interim audit procedures, which, they go around and do the internal control test and that kind of thing. And I was pleased to see that between Moss Adams and our finance department, they've actually moved up the schedule of the advanced field work from October to September, so that they wanted to have more time to do that. And of course, we'll get the draft in November around the 18th and that kind of thing. Then the audit committee meeting will have the review to discuss the results of the audit procedures and formalization of the audit reports. And of course, we want to have this the presentation to the city council in December. So I came across with confidence that we've got the right group in the audit world here. Interestingly, we heard in last year that there were a great many generally accepted accounting procedure changes that they had to deal with. There's not one this year. There's not a single one. So that's good, but there's a couple coming up in 2025 on compensated absences and risk disclosures. And so they weren't prepared to talk in detail about that because I think those have just been released. So that's good. We got a little bit of breathing room on new things we have to deal with. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Anderson?
Not much to report. The Transportation System Advisory Committee met last week for their 5th meeting. They were reviewing a lot of maps that, if you're a map geek, are very fascinating to check out. I think the most relevant one, or at least the one that sparked the most discussion, was around BLTS and PLTS. That's, if you remember back from our TSP conversation, the bicycle level of stress and the pedestrian level of stress. And there was some interesting comments about, does this really map to where people are feeling stress on our roadways? And so in the materials, they don't have those maps, at least the materials posted online, but I'd love to share them out to council, maybe in a group email, to be able to show you all and see your thoughts, because I think it's valuable. I have some formalized thoughts about the House Bill 2017 too. I can wait to share them, but I did a little research here as we went down the dais, so I can chat about that too later.
If you want to go ahead.
Yep, I found the original language. So the original letter that came from the retreat said for that point, finish legislatively directed capital projects from HB 2017 and HB 3055. So I think if I'm remembering from our conversation about that particular phrase, it was that the capital projects were there were so many that were called out in those two pieces of legislation that we wanted them to add specificity. And so I think what has ended up happening is that in the hope of adding specificity, we actually, encouraged the county to double down on specifically the widening project. So I think, we have a couple of options. I don't feel comfortable entirely moving forward without you feeling comfortable on this. I agree that it's, the time has passed for wordsmithing. I think, they're accepting logos into early September, which does not give us a chance to go back to the wordsmithing table. And honestly, I don't think that it would change the language, that the other jurisdictions have agreed to. But I'm happy to talk through what a compromise language would look like, language change. I'm totally fine going back to C4 and letting them know that we've had discussion around this particular item. If we feel uncomfortable moving forward, putting Milwaukee's logo in place, I'm happy to communicate that. That's, if that's the feeling of the whole council. So anyway, those are my initial thoughts. I'd love to hear what you looked up during reports.
Yeah, and I do have to say, if this is a 4-1 vote, it's totally fine if it's a 4-1 vote. Like if you want to put the logo up and I disagree, so be it. It's a democracy. I will say, with the highway widening project specifically, some of the concerns that we have, in 2023, the project cost about $500 million, and that has likely only increased in the last 2 years. If we think about the investments that we could make in Clackamas County, as opposed to doing highway widening on 7 miles of highways with $500 million, there are a suite of other options. And that $500 million is unfunded. The state does not have a plan to get that money. That is where our tolling plan came from that upset so many people in Clackamas County. And so as we think about what it means to have, I think I'm a tax and spend liberal as much as the rest of them. I don't want to commit ourselves to these ballooning projects that we can't fund without some really onerous tax structures. I think it also, when we think about highway widening projects, they really run counter to our climate goals. This project specifically would add about 79 to 109 million vehicles mile traveled a year, as well as 1.2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide by estimate. And it's all in service of improving transit along the I-205. I think there are better ways that we can do this. We can look at public transit options. We can look at other investments to be able to, as opposed to creating induced demand for our highways, getting people off the streets and finding other ways than a single occupancy vehicle to be able to get around. And so for all those reasons, I'm just generally opposed to the idea that we can widen our highways out of our transportation problems that we face. I think that we have to consider other approaches. And I worry that when we commit to fight for $500 million in funding for the I-205, we're stopping a lot of the other really valuable investments that we want to see happen throughout that other letter. So for all those reasons, I would tend to say no. I'm happy to, again, be the 4-1 here, but that is my real sticking point with the projects in 2017 and 3055.
So I will say that I'm not a commuter. I don't drive to 205 that stretch very often, but I have heard people complain about that stretch where it goes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes and then back to 3 for 15 years. I mean, that is something I hear complaints about a lot. I don't feel strongly, but I just think it is some, and it is, the point is not lost on me that the communities that probably care most about that are largely the communities who oppose tolling.
Well, and and I don't want to say across the board because I can't remember where, everybody's arguments stood, but communities that are directly adjacent to the congestion on 205 have been really actively involved in conversation about other alternatives too, and looking at projects to be able to kind of, peel some of that traffic load off of 205. So, I mean, I feel like they have been active in the conversation, and also, I think that it's difficult to have this level of the conversation and not have like our partners from like Oswego here or Wilsonville or Westland, because I've they do have really impassioned concerns. I will underline this by saying I do not believe that widening highways reduces congestion. If you widen highways, more cars just come to those really wide highways. So I think that these are things that are kind of, opposed. So, okay, then how do you feel comfortable proceeding, Mayor? Do you want to pause on this, or do you want to do, I mean, I respect, we could do just a vote and see where it lands. Or,
I mean, does anybody else have views on this that they want to chime in?
Well, I will tell you that, I'm torn on this because I think Will makes a very good argument. I guess I'm concerned about Milwaukie being viewed as not a team player with the region. I'm concerned about that. And I would hate for this to become, oh, it's Milwaukie again, and I think we've done a lot to be a team player on the social services side of the county. I mean, we really have. We've stepped up. We haven't been a not in my backyard kind of thing. And so I do want to be a regional player, but man, I'm just kind of torn. I just about this, and but I think I can go 51% of releasing the authority for the logo, which means
Councilor
that's a vote
Coach
for, I guess.
I'm with Council President Massey. It's a tough one because Will does bring up good points. Like what are we really? It's contradictory, right? It's contradictory to the states too, and what they say they're about as well. But there's also a reality that we're facing in that area. I mean, it doesn't really impact us that much either, because we're so far away. But I don't want to seem like we're not a team player. Driving, I drive that once in a while for work, and it does get tight. It doesn't bother me because I got an electric car, so I'm not really burning anything. But that's the other side I look at it too. It's like, well, like that money could be used to transitioning to electric cars, right? Like that's probably where we really need to focus, because people are going to drive regardless. It's what they drive that we really need to focus on. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I do. I also worry about not being a team player. So yeah, that's a tough one. I'll go with whatever the council feels is better. I mean, that's how I see it. If the majority says let's do it, I'll do it. If we end up saying no because of the 205, then I'm okay with that too. I know that's unhelpful.
I really appreciate, in our work session, we were talking about really getting into the meat of some of these topics, and I think this is what we're doing. So I know it's late, but right. I really appreciate this conversation. So I think if I'm interpreting the straw poll, we have support to move forward with the logo. I respect your vote in opposition, and what I'd like to do is, and I'll sit with you and come up with some language that we can take back to government relations and possibly the jurisdictions that that reflect the projects that are included here specifically, and have a conversation about like it makes sense to be a regional partner. We would expect that if the situation was reversed, that they would support us as well. But these are really nuanced conversations, and they do have an impact on our climate goals and on our regional transportation congestion. So if you're okay, like partnering a little bit in the aftermath on this, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, I totally am. And I respect, we can disagree all we want up here. No, nothing's personal.
Yeah.
I really, in the legislature, they have a tradition where they have a little flag that they give if you're a 1 no vote. So I am not opposed to being a 1 no vote. And it's a lot less valid to say I'm a 1 no vote out of 5 as opposed to 1 out of 60. But I am happy to be the 1 no vote here. And I really do appreciate, this is a good conversation. This is fun to do.
All right, well,
Okay.
thank God I don't have any more reports.
Actually, you do. Oh.
Wow.
Okay, I do think I think that sounds like a good resolution. I think anyway, I won't elaborate on what people have already said. I do think, it's also a bit of pick your battles, and we want the county commissioners' goodwill on some other things. And so being a team player on this is, also maybe serves that interest as well. So, so on council reports, I did want to, Councilor Anderson sent around a thing about the transportation funding package. They're coming to the end of their roadshow, right? Oh, no, it's end of September. It's end of September. It's not end of August. Okay. I mean, so they end the roadshow in Happy Valley, as I recall. And okay, I do think we probably ought to have a conversation in September before that about what things we might want to be saying in those meetings, and who wants to attend those meetings. So I just want to put that on everybody's radar screen. And then I just wanted to say to Councilor Savengord, so at the last meeting, as you may recall, we went really late. Hopefully we won't go quite so late tonight. And so people didn't get to do their full, I think, council reports. As I recall, Councilor Savengord brought up the C4 meeting, and that there had been a presentation from the state, the governor's housing folks. I listened to that presentation. Well, I listened to most of that presentation today, and I will finish it. And it left me with some questions I want to ask of the state, of the governor's person and the DCLD. So I will be contacting you, Councilor Savengord, to run those questions by you and see how you might want to promote that. Okay. Might want to handle that.
That sounds great. And I have my notes from that meeting. So they're extensive. So I will send them to you in an email. And then you can read through those. I don't know that they'll help, but.
I think my questions are about things they didn't really address. They sort of mentioned in passing and then didn't fill in the blanks. But like I said, I'm not quite finished with the tape, and I'd love to see your notes to see if I missed something. So that's great. That's great. I appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you know who your point of contact there is in the state?
Well, Matthew Schabold, and then the person at DCLD was Kelly Reed and Ethan Stuckmeyer.
The reason I ask is that a Milwaukie resident is working in the governor's housing office, Kim Travis. Anyone know her?
Yes.
Okay. So she was the chair of the planning commission. She's working in the governor's housing office now. I just didn't know if we encountered her again or not. Yeah.
I didn't know she was working in the governor's office. She was working at OCHS last I knew, but
She told me she was working in the governor's
office, okay, interesting. Interesting. Well, that's good to know. She wasn't part of this presentation, but yeah, anyway. That's it for council reports? No other council reports. All right, so we are about ready to adjourn, but I have a script to read about, I do not have a script to read. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Sorry. After the regular session, council will meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. 2H, to consult with counsel regarding the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. 2F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. And 2E, to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. I don't think I need to read the rest of that since we do not have a member of the media here. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular session.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the regular session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the regular session is adjourned.